if we need. At the end of my mother's life, we thought that there would be 2 to 6 months, but time was not hers at that point. I had come home for the holidays. I had this premonition that I needed to come home. And at that time, my husband and I lived in Denver, Colorado, and I was the choir director of a small Lutheran church. And you don't usually leave at Christmas time in a small Lutheran church to come home. But I just had this premonition that I needed to go home. And my mom had said she wasn't feeling good. She hadn't been feeling good. And I said, what's wrong? She says, I think I have the flu. Oh, I said. So I went home. Eric and I packed our bags. We went home, and I sang her favorite hymn in church that she just loved. And I said to Mom and Dad, Mom, you're looking a little yellow. She said, yeah, I know, I've had the flu. Oh, okay. And you know how it is with adult children, you don't tell your parents what they need to do, right? Because I had said, you think you might want to go to the doctor? And they kind of looked at me, no, it's just the flu. Oh. So we ended up, this was after 9/11, so Eric and I went to the airport. We were at the airport with my husband and her sister, and we got there and the plane had been canceled. That was something that was happening after 9/11. It wasn't uncommon, but there we were. So we stayed overnight. We went to the airport the next day. In line to check our bags, my dad called. It's Dad. Yeah, what's up? Just put Mom in the hospital. Oh, do you want me to stay? Well, not if it's going to cost you anything. Which is typical of my father. But my sister was pulling clothes out of my suitcase and saying, oh, you're staying, because I'm not doing this alone. So I stayed. We went to the hospital. I remember very, very vividly my dad and my sister and I at my mother's bedside, and the doctor came in, and my mother asked the doctor, am I dying? And Dr. Brunn said, yes, you are. And that's when he said 2 to 5 months. Well, we went home. My sister stayed with me, but she had a family of her own. She had to get back to, so she went to the city. Do you think you're going to be okay? I said, yeah, I'll be okay. You're going to come the next day. So I went to bed about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. My dad comes knocking at my door. I think we better go to the hospital. I said, oh, okay, all right, I'll get ready. Oh, no, it's for me. I said, what's going on? Well, I think I'm having a heart attack. Oh, okay. I said, well, let's call 911 or I'll drive you. Oh, no. I'll drive myself. You stay here with Mom. And because he had done this before, I said, okay. And I let him drive himself to the hospital. Because once he got to the hospital, he was just that fine. He has acid reflux issues that mimic heart attack. So he got to the hospital. I called him. He was happy-dappy because they had the best pancakes there. So he was very happy. So the next morning, he comes home from the hospital. We have hospice meeting come in. And we're in an argument now over the bathing situation. Because my dad would bathe my mother every night at 10 o'clock. And the hospice worker said, well, we're not coming at 10, but we'll come as late as we can, but not at 10. My mother says, don't need to. Dwight bathes me. Okay, but Mom, I gotta switch things up here a little bit because Dad was just in the emergency room because his workload's getting a little. Dad bathes me. Dwight bathes me every night, 10 o'clock. Well, we had that argument. We didn't get very far, but hospice was going to come back the next day. They didn't have to because she died the next day. I always say, that's how much her baths meant to her. If we were going to change him up, she was going to show us who was in charge to the end. She died the next day. So my caregiving situation with my mother was a long journey because she had Huntington's disease, which is in the Parkinson family. It's a movement disorder disease. But Huntington's, the stance or the gait, the walk, the way they carry themselves, you really look like you're intoxicated most of the time. And you're accused of being drunk too. And there is a dementia component with Huntington's. So my mother struggled with that disease for a long time. So I was of great support mostly to my father. My mother changed as she aged. She became more isolated. She didn't want to be out in public. So my way of interacting with her was through cards. weekly cards or postcards with 3 different themes. Norwegian, because we're Norwegian. Lutheran, anything Lutheran. Or cats, anything with cats. So those were kind of my themes of my postcards that I would send her. And it was very, very touching because I would get letters back from her, postcards back, that I could hardly read, but she wrote them. And they meant a lot to me. So that was my caregiving journey with my mom, and it's still sort of ongoing with my dad, but I'll get into that later. So what this all did for me and where my road has been. I graduated from St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. It is not the St. Olaf of the Golden Girls. I know. Because St. Olaf really isn't a town, it's a college in Northfield, Minnesota, along with Carleton College. And I majored in Norwegian and psychology. So of course I knew exactly what I wanted to do after I got out of college. And I waited tables. And as I was waiting tables, appropriately at the Foley store, right? I mean, come on. I was asked to teach a Norwegian language and culture elder hostel up in northern Minnesota at the Bemidji Concordia language villages. I thought this is going to be a piece of cake. Number one, I can just sit around and chat Norwegian and use my language, and old people don't learn, so this is going to be really easy. Because my grandparents, my 2 grandmothers especially, were of that generation where they said, once you retired, you're done. And both grandmas only had 8th grade educations. So that's kind of what I got from them. I got up and I had these women, mostly in my language class, wanting to learn verb conjugation and sentence structure and how they're going to get around in Norway when they go visit their relatives. And I was just like, wow. After that week, I loved teaching older adults. So eventually I went back to get a master's degree in Scandinavian studies, because now I thought I could just teach elder hostels my whole life. Okay, then I woke up and I got a degree in continuing in adult education with a focus on aging. While at Madison, I started looking at activity programs that were offered for independent people in independent living communities. And bingo was about it. I was pretty amazed at that time. Assisted living was just coming on. So we moved to Denver, Colorado, and I worked for a large senior living community. And I started in activities, and the first thing I did was I changed the name of the activity room to the journey room, where we let our minds and spirits and bodies be engaged and active. And I had discussion groups. I had music groups, where my favorite one was a woman with Parkinson's disease. After I was playing CDs, and I would ask them questions about the music and have them tap out feelings and what they felt about the music. After I did that first class, this woman with Parkinson's, and if you know anything about Parkinson's, it's flat affect. She came up to me and she said, I have CDs. I said, that's great. Would you like me to bring them? Yeah. I said, do you want to pick out 6 for next week? Yes. So she came down with a Cuban theme. And then we discussed her music and where she got it. And that's the kind of activities that we had, along with some of the other bigger ones, but those meaningful one-on-ones. After I worked there for a while, my resident said, you need to go, because I was doing a lot of teaching, and I worked my way up to assisted living management, so now I was behind a desk. But what I learned in assisted living and managing was that the family members that came into my office and said to me, please keep Mom busy because she's driving me crazy. I don't care what you do. She loves going shopping. She does. You could take her on every outing. She loves to eat. And then you ask Mom, and she's like, I hate shopping. Right? So I noticed right away this conflict between family members. So that's when I left that management position and I started doing training, started originally training in senior housing about how to be okay with aging. Because if we're going to work with older adults, we have to be okay with aging ourselves, right? Because we love these people. We have to be okay with it. If we're giving care to someone who is older, we have to be okay with aging ourselves. Because otherwise, we're not loving them fully if we're fighting aging in our own selves. That's my feeling. I know, two years ago when I was writing my annual letter, looked in the mirror, I was combing my hair, and I said, what in the heck is this? You know what gathers here? After a while, back fat. I never had back fat before. You know, so that's an aging thing that happened, and I was really angry at first, but now it's just part of me. So, now I go around and I teach, and I wrote my second book, which you all have a copy of, The Unexpected Caregiver, and really, that book came from my interactions with all these people and in assisted living, and I used to write for an activity magazine. And so I combined everything and put a book together that would help people engage more with their older adults in different ways, instead of the drastic phrase that so many of us ask our loved ones, relatives, even residents, how are you today? And what's the phrase usually? Fine, or my favorite is rotten. You would be too if you lived here. My back hurts. My kids don't come to visit me. What am I, chopped liver? I'm here. I'm visiting you. Well, you're not going to stay very long. So, that's where I'm at. So now I have a radio show called The Unexpected Caregiver, which is going into syndication, which I'm real happy about. I'll let you know if it comes to Portland. It should get there. It's starting and going to the coasts. And I do a lot of these types of presentations and keynotes and talk about long-term care, and we're going to get into all that tonight. Here's what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk as well amongst yourselves. Yeah, I know, because some of you would rather die than stand up here and do what I'm doing. Yeah, okay. But I'm going to talk about the who, what, where, when, and why and how of caregiving. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. And that's how we're going to break out this thing called caregiving. Now, first I want to know right away, how many of you call yourselves a caregiver? Okay. And if you don't, why don't you call yourself a caregiver? Well, I'm looking at you this time wanting an answer. You buried two parents. Okay. Okay, so you buried, so you figure you're done? Right. And that's how it's going to come back at it. Yeah. Because basically, if you look at a group of people, every other one is a caregiver. You've all self-selected, so you're here. But I'm telling you, the wider public out there who are doing things that you're doing don't call themselves a caregiver. They're just helping mom out. They're just driving her to the doctor, or getting her food once in a while, or maybe they go out and mow the lawn, or they take dad to the big whatever. But they don't necessarily call themselves a caregiver. That's one thing that we are working on changing in the society, is raising up this word caregiving, so that people understand that we are caregivers. So what I want you to do right now is just talk amongst yourselves, amongst your neighbors, and people you don't know maybe, and just tell a little bit about your story, why you're here. What is your caregiving situation? Or what do you think it may be? Go ahead.